Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Cadet, third class Monica Mama. It is my privilege to welcome you to this session of the 24th Annual National Character and Leadership Symposium, made possible by our flagship supporter, the Class of '73, the Association of Graduates, the USAFA Endowment, and many generous supporters. It is now my pleasure to introduce today's speaker. Kari Granger is an executive coach specializing in leadership development and organizational performance, a 2002 United States Air Force Academy graduate and combat veteran. She has worked with the U.S. Armed Forces, governmental agencies, universities, and commercial businesses to achieve breakthrough mission performance, from achieving an organization's most imperative strategic concerns to leading logistical operations for hurricane evacuation missions and leading U.S. troops under enemy fire during combat in Iraq. Ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor to present to you Ms. Kari Granger.
Thank you. Good morning. How about that opening ceremony, right? So this morning's session, Cultivating the Warrior Ethos. And I have to give you a little warning. How many of you knew this was a workshop? Anybody know it was you were going to work this morning? So it's a workshop. But we'll start out easy. The first question is simply, does the warrior ethos, does cultivating the warrior ethos apply to you? So, if you feel like cultivating the warrior ethos applies to you personally, raise your hand. Great. And if cultivating, there is no right answer here. If cultivating the warrior ethos does not apply to you, it's an interesting topic, you'll learn something, great speakers, but it doesn't really apply to me, raise your hand. Good? And if you didn't raise your hand, raise your hand. Okay, good. Not so hard so far, huh? If you're like me, you might say, well, I don't know. You need to tell me what the warrior ethos is. So I looked in that same direction. The Air Force instruction has great things to say about the warrior ethos, but I like to start with the root. So when I looked at the etymology, you know, what's warrior, what's ethos? Warrior, one who wages war, one who's actively, energetically, courageously involved. And ethos, nature, disposition, the essence, characteristic, spirit, moral character, you know, it's all about being. So what I see there is we're really talking about the being of a warrior. Now the next question is, well, is the being of a warrior the same as studying and learning about being a warrior? And as somebody who studies being, no, I say no. There's a big difference between studying, learning about something, and cultivating that something within ourselves. There's a big difference between knowing about leadership and cultivating the being of a leader. There's a big difference between knowing and studying about the warrior ethos and cultivating the warrior ethos within ourselves. There's a big difference, I found out, in 2005 between knowing a leader should be courageous and actually being courageous. You know, with the first time that you hear the mortar attacks and everything else, all that knowledge is somehow not quite as accessible. So how do we cultivate a being within ourselves? So the next question I have is, well, is the being of a warrior limited to the battlefield? So if you think it's limited to the battlefield, raise your hand. So a yes. Okay. And a no. And a didn't raise my hand. Okay, very good. Yeah, I'm going to take this stance today that no, it's not. And I'm going to say that, yeah, while national security requires the being of a warrior, there's so many issues in our world today. That needs people who are actively, energetically, courageously involved in waging war against racism, against obesity, against slavery. And while warriors do often wear the uniform, the being of a warrior, the warrior ethos, comes in all sorts of expressions. So my stance today is, no, the being of a warrior isn't limited to the battlefield. Okay, so now are you ready to work a little? Okay. All right, so this is a very complex logistical operation. You're going to give one person, and only one person, a high five. Ready, go. Okay, you ready for your next instruction? Now, if you didn't get a high five, in a moment you can kind of stand up and look to see if there's anybody else standing up, and you could partner with them. The person you just gave a high five to is your partner, okay? And I'm gonna give you 2 minutes total to discuss the following questions. 1, what are you a warrior for? What are you a warrior for? And 2, what do you fantasize about being a warrior for? So every morning on the way to work, I'm listening to NPR, and I hear about the Syrian refugee crisis. And for about 5 minutes, I'm going to adopt a Syrian family. I'm going to volunteer my efforts at one of the refugee camps. And then I take my Starbucks into my office, heated, and begin looking at the Financial Times or my email. And by the end of the day, I've kind of forgotten about it. But every morning, I fantasize about being a warrior. And the thing is I could. You know, if I was willing to give up my comfort and convenience in life, I could become a warrior for that. And so I want to know, what do you fantasize about being a warrior for? Okay, 2 minutes total. I'm just going to cut you off at 2 minutes, wherever you are in the conversation. All right, so please begin. Okay, 20 seconds. 20 seconds. Okay, please complete. Please complete. I wish we had time to hear a bit. This morning we don't. So I'm going to trust you had great conversation. All right, here's one thing that I've come to realize. The warrior ethos, in my opinion, cannot be pursued as an end in of itself. Rather, it must ensue as the natural consequence of one's personal dedication to a cause greater than oneself. In other words, the warrior ethos has a directionality. There is no warrior, only a warrior for. Unless, I have a 3-year-old, she plays dress up, so, if you dress up, sure, there's a warrior, but only a warrior for. And I think you're going to hear this theme over the course of the 2 days. Something about a dedication greater than yourself. What is it that you're a warrior for? The other thing I learned about speaking at the Air Force Academy is you should always weave in at least one war story. So here you go. Aliyah Salim, Kuwait, I showed up, and it was pretty deplorable conditions. I'm an aircraft maintenance officer by trade. We had mediocre tools, it was dirty, it was grubby. We were flying the same birds that some in our audience flew in the 60s. They were old birds. No offense. Yeah. We had a "this sucks" attitude. The resignation and cynicism were part of the pre-deployment shots. We had a 58% mission effectiveness rate. Yeah, what that means is your taxpayer dollars were paying for 58% of our missions to do their job. Yeah, it was pretty deplorable. And the kind of thinking around it is, well, we're only going to be here for 5 months. We can put up with it until then. And as such, inside of that, and it had been that way for years. A unit comes in, a unit goes out. A unit comes in, a unit comes out. And it's the same kind of attitude, yeah? So inside of that, my entire commitment as the officer in charge was to keep my airmen happy, out of trouble, and get home safely. Not a bad commitment. In fact, that's what I was told. You do a great job if you keep people safe, out of trouble, and you get home. So as such, having that kind of commitment, that impacted my way of being. It impacted what I said, the language I used. I'd tell jokes to try to keep people's spirits up. I used explanations to explain poor performance. But, I was so good at those analyses and explanations and justifications, I actually got company grade officer of the whole base with a 58% mission effectiveness rate, huh? I was good at my explanations. Yeah. My emotional state, I had said was something like a resignation or a cynicism. It was more like I'm surviving, and I can survive for a few months. My body, my bearing, was kind of one of those, all right, I'm getting my task done, slightly annoyed, pretty concave, huh? Yeah, not so much the being of a warrior, yeah? So I'm going to call all that together, the language, the emotion, the way we hold ourselves, way of being. Until one morning, 2:30 a.m., I got woke up in my barracks. It was the first time for me. They said, you have an hour to get your weapons, your gear, your team, and get in the back of the 130. You're leading a team downrange, and our job was to go into Iraq and recover one of our aircraft. And all of a sudden, it got really real. And when I got on the aircraft, by the way, he's not looking for birds, right? Yeah, this guy's looking for surface-to-air missiles, and if he sees one, good detection system, I guess, he's going to press that little button which allows the chaff to come out of the aircraft and hopefully confuse that missile. In Kuwait, things aren't, that's where the Marines went for R&R in Kuwait. Very different than going into Iraq. So I started to meet the husbands, the brothers, the sons, the fathers, a few women as well, but it was mostly men. And I started to see the face, the face of the people that we were supporting as maintainers. And I'll never forget, one sergeant said, "Wow, you're the maintainers of those model aircraft, those 130s. When that model doesn't fly, casualties, things are bad for us. The casualties go up. We can't do our job as well as we can do our job." And all of a sudden I got, wow, okay, when we don't fly, when that particular model of 130 doesn't fly, people die. And that changed everything. I had the same troops, I had the same deplorable conditions, I had the same birds, I had the same 130 birds, I had the same bosses that I had been making wrong. But when we don't fly, people die. I couldn't tolerate anything anymore. That changed the entire orientation. I started to hold people accountable in a different way. My body posture changed. Wait a second. One sentence, when we don't fly, people die, had you hold yourself differently? Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I became focused, responsible. A water bottle on the top of a fire hydrant wasn't tolerable anymore. We couldn't just kind of go through the checklist anymore. There was an impeccability that was required. Yeah, I became in that moment a warrior, leading warriors for our warriors downstream. And the whole thing altered when I got dedicated to a cause greater than myself. So, the results work out. I like telling stories that work out. And eventually we had such a high mission completion rate that the control center would call me on the radio and say, the computers are broken. They're showing you're 100%. How could that be? Yeah, but it was true. Because when the entire team got dedicated to something greater than ourselves, we started taking actions we just were not imaginable inside of surviving the situation. So now it's going to be your turn, of course. What or who or what are you a warrior for? So you already have your partner. And this is we're warming you up. So this is just the next level, huh? Identify an area where you were invested, but suffering a bit. It could be any area of life. It could be inside of a relationship. It could be inside of your work. It could be inside of a big cause that you fantasize about making a difference inside of. So any area of your life where you're fairly invested, but you're suffering a little bit. Anybody have one of those? Raise your hand if you can think of one. Okay, good. Some people have 2 hands up. I understand. And just take a moment to think, what is it about this area that is important to you? And why is it important to others? It might have turned into an obligation or a burden or something that's kind of annoying. Like I'm just looking at the cadets for a moment. I got to get my English paper done. Yeah, you're invested, maybe suffering a little bit. But why is it really important to you? It's not about the English paper, huh? It's about something much greater than that the English paper is a part of. And can you identify the cause underneath it all that's worthy of your dedication and your service? So, let's see. I'm going to give you 3 minutes total this time. You have to do fast work, huh? Okay, so with your partner, 3 minutes, and I'll just cut you off again. So please begin. 20 seconds. 20 seconds. Doesn't bother me one bit. Okay, please complete. Wow, I have to say I am extraordinarily impressed by this group. When I say please complete, within like 5 seconds you just shh. It's unprecedented. You should be very proud of your performance. Okay, so the next domain I want to talk about, and this really is a foundation for, we have like 50 minutes this morning, so we're not going to solve all the world's problems, but a foundation. So being dedicated to something greater than yourself was the first aspect. The next aspect I want to look at is being accountable. A warrior ethos is not an accountability one has. So I can't say, Bonnie, you're accountable for the warrior ethos, and you're accountable for bringing drinks on Friday, right? It doesn't work that way, huh? The warrior ethos rather is a chosen way of being in the world. Yeah, so it's not an accountability one has, it's a chosen way of being. I like to distinguish between having an accountability and being accountable. They're really two different things. So having an accountability, a really good thing. That's what most of us operate on when we talk about accountability. Who's accountable for what? Something I have to do. Maybe I want to do it, but regardless, it's something I have to do. Being accountable is a way I choose to be. Having an accountability is usually a responsibility given to me. It could be assigned, but the responsibility tends to be given to me. Being accountable, responsibility is self-declared. In fact, in some instances, responsibility is taken. I'm accountable for this. Having an accountability oriented around the task, the activity. Being accountable, it's more a place to stand. It's an empowering context. I stand that I am accountable. Does that mean that I'm at fault, or I'm to blame, or I'm taking credit? No, it's something a little different. It's more like I say that this outcome's going to happen, whether or not I'm assigned the duty. Having an accountability oftentimes is divided among people. You bring the drinks, you bring the burgers, you bring the music, you bring the grill. Being accountable is not divided. It may or may not be assigned. No, we will have the most joyful social tailgate we've ever seen, regardless of whether or not I'm assigned the drinks, huh? You may or may not have the accountability. On the having side, oftentimes accountability is something that takes place after the job is done to explain performance or results. Who is accountable for that? Did you do this? Yes or no? Did you do it on time? Yes or no? Being accountable is something that we use to ensure success. It's a powerful place to stand. I'm going to see to that outcome regardless of the circumstances. Having an accountability, obstacles can become, they can become the explanations, like when I was in Kuwait and we had poor performance, and all of the obstacles in our way was part of why we weren't making the numbers. it's 126 degrees. Our engine's bogged down, you know? That was an explanation. On the being accountable side, our obstacles become part of the hero's journey. It's part of the story. It's part of the pathway. So there are really two different places to come from when we look at accountability. You can be accountable for anything. Excuse me. So an experiment, just 1 second, I need to get a quick drink of water. You're wondering what your experiment's going to be, huh? Identify an accountability that you have that has turned into an obligation or a have-to-do. Anybody have the have-to-dos? Yeah. So identify something like that. Notice if there's any difference for you in your way of being when you say the following two things. So see if there's, wow, does something happen in me when I say the following things? One is, I have to do X activity. I have to write my English paper. I have to do a lot of stuff today. I have to make sure that I email my parents. Versus, I am accountable for X outcome. I am accountable for the balance in my life. I am accountable for my performance at USAFA. You see the difference? Yeah, so turn your X have-to-do activity into an accountability for an outcome. And just say it both ways. It's an experiment. You don't have to believe it. You just have to experiment with it and see if something happens for you. All right, so this shouldn't take too long because you just have to say two things, huh? Okay, so I'm going to give you a full 2 minutes to say two things back and forth. Ready? Begin. It's 20 minutes, okay. Okay, finish up. Amazing, just amazing. Okay, raise your hand if something different happened for you when you said them in different ways. If something happened for you, raise your hand. Okay, good. If it didn't happen for you? Okay, good. Be an EI session afterwards. Just kidding. All right, the last thing we want to look at is an embodiment for action. All I mean by embodiment is looking at our emotions in our body. Huh? You know, there's a difference when you walk home from school or work or whatever, and you walk in the door in a mood of resentment or a mood of joy. Do you notice the evening goes different? Same if you walk into a meeting. If you walk in with a mood of suspicion versus a mood of collaboration, meeting goes different. But oftentimes we don't pay enough attention to the domains of mood. We also don't pay enough attention to the domains of our body, of our bearing, of our disposition, of the way we hold ourselves, and that actually altering the way we hold ourselves changes the perspective. You know, there's a lot of research out there lately that shows that depending on how you hold your body, different chemicals happen for you. You know, you hold your body like this all the time, you have an increase of cortisol. That's the stress hormone. You hold your body in those, you know, I'm the greatest power poses, you have an increase of testosterone. Yeah, holding your body differently changes your chemical makeup. Okay, so 4 basic moods. These aren't all the moods, just 4 we want to look at today. Across the top, we got facts, what happened, it's kind of past base, and future base, what's possible. And across in the vertical, we have resisting and accepting. So what happens when you oppose or resist what's happened, the facts in your life? What happens is resentment. Yeah, when you're like, it shouldn't have been that way, I can't believe, that's where resentment builds. When you resist or oppose what's possible, it's not, could be possible for somebody else, but not us, not here. What happens is resignation. That's what we call resignation. You're resisting what's possible. When you accept what happened, and I don't mean it's okay, I mean you say, yes, that happened, and you allow what happened to be what happened. You allow what's so to be what's so. Nothing added, nothing subtracted. We call that acceptance or peace. And when we accept possibility, when we say, yes, that's possible for me, for others, for us, for the world, we call that ambition. So as a warrior, the being of a warrior has a level of ambition, has an ambition for something greater. And what I find interesting is you get to ambition through acceptance, through accepting what's so. Anybody else getting over a cough? Yeah, and when you accept what's so, it allows for some room for something else to be possible. Have you ever been around people who cannot accept what happened? Is there any room for anything else? You can't put any possibility on top of that. That's putting icing on a mud pie. So ambition is the mood I want to highlight. I want to highlight that we get there through acceptance. Okay, now this is the most involved thing that you're going to do today. Pretty soon I'm going to have you stand up and follow directions in how to stand. I won't make you talk, and then you can sit back down, okay? So we're going to practice the body dispositions of stability and resolute, just to see what it feels like, okay? So if you can stand up, don't make a lot of noise, just stand up, huh? Great. I know this is a little weird, right? Okay, but we can't get to all of it by thinking only, huh? All right, so I'd like you to stand kind of put your feet shoulder width apart, even a little bit more, have a nice base, and imagine that your legs are oak tree trunks. I mean, they're solid, huh? Really solid. And not only that, but you got a big dinosaur tail coming out of your tailbone. Yeah. So it's almost like you got a tripod, huh? I mean, that's stable. Can you feel the stability of that? Yeah. Then let your breath come from a little lower down, not like holding your breath, but a little lower. And, allow your chest to come up a little. Looking straight on. I know it's kind of hard because the stage is pretty high. You guys are in good, we're straight on. Yeah. Yeah, straight on. And you might, kind of take up a little bit more space. You take up space and you don't apologize for it. It's a little regal, kind of noble, a little bit like, welcome to my kingdom. Yeah. Okay, so this is what we call stability. Now we're going to add something called resolute. And resolute is the thing where you kind of can hear the Mission Impossible music in the background. It's like, I'm going to get this thing done, huh? So now, shake it out a little bit, yeah? And now, it's still shoulder width, but one foot's a little bit in front of the other. I know you don't have a lot of room to work with. Yeah, and just kind of get focused on one point in front of you. So it's a little bit more forward, and it's one point, and I'm going to get to that point, man. There's nothing going to stop me. I'm getting right to that point. Yeah, can you feel that? Okay, so stability and resolute. So now go back to that stability disposition. Remember, welcome to my kingdom. Yeah, and from here, find that point. So bring that little bit of resoluteness to your stable disposition. Can you find the balance? Okay. Does anybody feel that standing in this way feels different? Yay, nay? Okay, good. Good. Okay, now I'm going to ask you to sit down and find that place while you're sitting. So find that stable resoluteness in your chair. I do coach people all the time. And I used to coach people just talking through stuff. It'd take like an hour to get through their stuff. Now I cut all that off and just coach them, put them in a different body disposition, and it takes like 10 minutes. It's amazing. Because what I've learned is when you alter your body, it alters your emotional state, and it actually alters the way you see a lot of things. Okay, so here's our last thing together, our last exercise. So pick an area. It could be the same thing you've been looking at, or it could be something different. So pick an area of significance that's not working so well for you. In your seat, in other words, don't pick my local grocery store never has the kind brand of chips I want. That's not significant enough. In your seat, find the stable and resolute body disposition. So how does that feel sitting down? You're going to accept the facts, the what's so of the situation. Yeah, you may not like it. You may not agree with it. It may not be the way you want it, but it is how it is, isn't it? Yeah, so let go of the resistance to how it is, accept how it is, as the way that it is, that's all. We're not saying that you have to tolerate it, we're just saying, guess what? It is that way. Yeah. Then allow for a certain ambition for a cause greater than yourself to emerge. So what underneath it all is really important to you? Why are you spending your time on that anyway? Why is that important to you? And why is that important to you? And why is that important to you? What is the cause underneath it all that has this thing be important to you? And allow some ambition for that mood of ambition to emerge. And lastly, declare yourself accountable for that outcome. What outcome? The outcome of that cause being fulfilled. So I'm going to let you practice this with your partner, and we're going to find out, does this open up for you any new pathways for being in action? So when you combine all these things, you can see there's that cause greater than yourself, there's the mood of ambition, there's the acceptance, and then there's the body disposition. When you bring it all together, does that do anything for you? Does that bring in a certain way of being that opens up some new pathways for action for you? All right, so now you get to bring it all together with your partner and just notice, what does that do for me? Yeah, or I don't know, Kari. I don't know what you're having us do here. Yeah, well, just do it full on and see what opens up. So let's see. 10:09. I'm going to give you a full 4 minutes. And then I'll ask you if you need more time, and you can raise your hand if you do, okay? So please, ready, begin. Okay, raise your hand if you need more time. All right. Now raise your hand if your partner did a good job on the exercise. Did it as it was meant to be done? Good. Yep. And if your partner, not so good, raise your hand. Okay, good. Partners, take the feedback. Great. So if you were able to see one new pathway for being in action, raise your hand. Okay? If you were not able to see any new pathways for being in action, raise your hand. Okay, good, little EI. And if you didn't raise your hand, please raise your hand. Okay, if you're still hiding out, raise your hand. Okay. All right, very good. Yeah, sorry, I got a time cue that didn't match my time cue. So I think I have till 10:23, is that correct? Okay, great. All right, good. Because that means that we have just a couple moments for questions, comments, or insights. So here's the thing. We're looking at the foundation. We looked at these three things: the dedication to a cause greater than oneself, being accountable, and an embodiment for action. And then there's a lot more we didn't get to, huh? You know, there's this whole dimension of moral fortitude. And it's a good thing we didn't get to all of them, because you have 2 more days worth of talks to go to. But I think if you take a look at these 3 domains, that there's only a warrior for. So what is it that I'm a warrior for? What is it that I'm actively, courageously, energetically involved, waging war on? Am I willing to be accountable for that outcome? I wasn't assigned the accountability. It's not my fault the thing happened. I don't even get credit if things go well. But am I willing to stand that I am accountable for that outcome as an empowering place to stand, as a place that gives me power? And can I cultivate in myself a mood, an emotion of ambition? You know, ambition is what allows us to persevere when we see challenges, when things come up for us. And by the way, can I hold myself in such a way that supports me in being a warrior? Being a warrior, yeah. I think you'll find that this helps set a foundation. And as I said, of course, there's more dimensions that you'll hear over the next 2 days that we didn't get to. So now I'd like to ask, does cultivating the warrior ethos apply to you? So if yes, raise your hand. Okay, if still no, raise your hand. And if unsure, raise your hand. Okay, good, great. So we have time if you'd like. And there's 200 people here, so it could be slightly intimidating, but just bring in your warrior ethos. Huh? So if you have a question, a comment, or an insight that you'd like to share, then we have a little bit of time for that, and we ask that you come to one of the microphones. So not only are we going to ask you to speak up and stand up, but to come over here. Okay, so if you do have a question or a comment or an insight that you'd like to ask or share, would you raise your hand? We could just kind of get a sense. I won't call on you. I just want to get a sense if anybody has it. I don't see you. Go ahead. Yeah, come on up here, please. Mm-hmm. Okay, please.
With the warrior ethos, and I think I was probably the only one in here who raised my hand.
Yes, very good.
So I did my dissertation on a lot of these topics that you take up, so I'm really excited about that also, but I wanted to sort of explain why I want to caution about when we talk about the warrior. So I did bioethics and studied military medicine, and healthcare, for instance, picks up waging war on things, but war is a specific activity, and it is engaged in violence. And so as an ethicist, I want to be very cautious. You picked definition 2, and I think all of us can metaphorically buy into the warrior ethos, but war is a particular effort in the world that includes martial skills. And so somebody like the Dalai Lama or Mother Teresa, I would hope, are not waging war with attendant violence. In fact, many here are probably familiarized with just war theory and that we are ultimately looking for peace as an outcome, but I don't think they're going through the process of violence. So I think I'm very cautious of a warrior ethos being projected onto all areas, maybe metaphorically, but I don't want to water down what our military as an operational mission does with that focus on supporting the warrior, supporting the war fighter, et cetera, et cetera. So I just wanted to sort of put that out there because I think, like all people, I reverence, respect, and love the warrior ethos, but I don't think I am myself a warrior. I may have passion and courage, and I have a commitment to peace through just war theory and all these other things, but I just thought that was something to add to the dialogue. So.
I love it, thank you. And I think that very, 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 very valid and very important contribution. So thank you.
Okay, sorry. My question is, cultivating the warrior spirit in yourself is a challenge, but once you conquer that challenge, how can you cultivate that in people who are hesitant or who are stuck in mindsets that they have to break out of before they can start cultivating?
Yeah. The first thing I'm going to say is Kevin Basic is speaking right after on cultivating the warrior ethos in others, which is a fabulous response to your question. Yeah, you're welcome. The thing that I find helps is a couple things. One is listening, getting where they're coming from. Huh? So you're speaking a little bit about a victim mentality, maybe. Yeah, it's valid what they're saying. And then beginning to ask for, well, given all of that, what are you really committed to? And if you can pull out of them some kind of commitment, you can begin to work with them. So if there's no commitment, advice isn't useful, huh? But if you can pull out of people what underneath it all they're committed to, even given the crappy circumstances, who do they want to be in spite of it all? That starts to help.
Thank you.
And I'd stick around for Kevin Basic's talk.
Hello, ma'am. My name is C.C. Robinson. I'm from United States Air Force Academy Preparatory School, Charlie Squadron.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask the question of that when we're cultivating the warrior ethos, it's very easy to become distracted and radically committed to something. And I wanted to know, when do you think is a good time to let go of something if others around you or even yourself, you start to feel as if something is just becoming a redundant process and it's just not working?
Yeah, and I think you're speaking about a difference between being attached to an outcome and being committed to an outcome. If I'm attached to an outcome, I don't have the objective view to see as the circumstances are changing. If I'm committed, I always want to keep my eyes open to the different forces at play so that I can become strategic in how I interact with them. And sometimes the answer is, okay, that's complete.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Unfortunately, our time is up. So I'm grateful for you, and we're not going to be able to take any more. Thank you so much.